Okay, shalom. Brilliant, brilliant lesson. Still small voice. So this is taken from this week's parasha that's just been parasha Pinchas, and it's the Haftarah, but there's a lot of great wisdom in this. Let's go and have a look. So we've got this verse from 1 Kings 19, and it says, "And he said, Go out and stand in the mountain before the Lord. Behold, the Lord passes, and a great and strong wind splitting mountains and shattering boulders before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. Not in the earthquake was the Lord. After the earthquake, fire. Not in fire was the Lord. And after the fire, a still small voice." So we're going to be having a look at this concept of the still small voice. Very interesting. First of all, we've got to understand that according to the Zohar, these three phenomena, the fire, the whirlwind and the earthquake, are actual husks that conceal the name of YHWH. But we'll go and have a look at the numbers. So treat them, understand what they are. When it says the YHWH is not there, it's because they actually act as a husk. It's like every husk. Ultimately, even the husk itself, the concealment itself is YHWH. It's just that not in and of itself. There's a lot of people in this world that are believing the earthquake, the wind and the fire are God himself. This is a problem that we face, isn't it? In a state of immaturity, we can't discern the concealment from the revelation. We tend to think that concealment is the revelation. We've got to get to that place of maturity. You'll see how significant that is when we go and have a look at the Gematria. So first of all, these three husks appear as YHWH himself. So 110 is the gematria of the three husks of the name YHWH. This was a number that I had from a long time ago, so I've still got the YHWH. And the earthquake, the fire and the whirlwind. So the wind is Haruach, comes to 209. Earthquake Hara'ash, which is 575, exactly the same as evil inclination. The evil inclination is part of the inclination of humanity. We've got a good inclination and an evil inclination. It's our outer reality, it's our outer nations, it's our Esav, our body, our vessel. 575. Ha'esh, fire, is 306. That is the exact gematria of Ruach Ha'Elohim, I think, and the Spirit of God. I do believe it's and the Spirit of God. Haruach Elohim. So let me just figure that out. Yeah. Ruach Elohim, and the Spirit of God, that is the Mashiach, is also Aesh. Okay, so there's always a holy and an unholy opposite. They together come to 1,100, which is 10 times 110. And 110 is the ordinal for Yeshua HaMashiach, Yeshua the Mashiach. So he, in a way, is a holy opposite to this. He is where we are able to perceive. In a way, he is like a concealment. The whole concept of the Mashiach, in a way, is like a concealment. It conceals the name YHWH, but from the concealment we get the revelation. Okay, so these are the ordinals. 39, 62 and 27 come to 128. If we add those two together, 1,100 and 128 to 1,228. All extremely significant numbers, by the way. All of these we are going to be looking at them, but not in this lesson. It will be a double part lesson. So straight away we've got this incredible connection to the concept Od Yosef Chai, which is the primary concept of the revelation of the Mashiach, or the unveiling of Yesod, the circumcision of Yesod. I've talked about this in previous videos, where Yesod at the moment, the whole concept of Mashiach ben Yosef, the whole channel between heaven and earth, is effectively encrusted in the foreskin of Esav in the Edomite exile. Okay, and it's primarily the teachings from the three main Abrahamic religions that encrust the concept of Mashiach ben Yosef, encrust the concept of the Tzaddik, encrust the concept of Yesod, encrust the concept of Yosef, and have him dressed up like a false god, like Yosef was dressed as a false god. and he appears dead to Tifereth, Yaakov, which is the name of YHWH. It's the son who appears dead, or it's the male anatomy in a flaccid state rather than alive. We need to bring him to life. There's lots involved in that, lots of truth regarding Yosef involved in that. Od Yosef Chai, in what ways is he alive? He's alive in the way of Torah. Od Yosef Chai, 1228, or alive in the name of YHWH. He's maintained his faithfulness to his name despite his horrific concealment as a false god. 1228. The concept of Mashiach is perfect, but only the Torah reveals it, and only when we can truly interpret the Torah and see the way that YHWH has been fulfilling his Torah in the world. So the Mispah Gadol of 974 plus 254, add them together, comes to 1228. 92 is the ordinal of Mashiach ben Dawid, when Dawid is spelt with additional yod, which is the wisdom that we gain from our experience of exile. It's the wisdom that we gain from the darkness of exile. 92 plus 101, I'm just saying, would be 193, 2 times which is 386, which is Yeshua. But we've got that connection there, 1228. So Od Yosef Chai is the revelation, the unveiling of the truth regarding Mashiach from his state of exile into Edom, is equivalent to the entire husks with which YHWH, the name of YHWH, has been concealed. Yosef has been concealed. The fact that Yosef is alive is concealed from Tifereth, YHWH. These 3 act as concealments of the name of YHWH. Most people call what they call YHWH is actually the earthquake, the wind, and the whirlwind, but they don't know that. Asher, Ahiyah, Asher, Ahiyah, I am that I am. It's got a square ordinal of 1144. It's got an ordinal of 84. If we add those two together, it comes to 1228, exactly the same as these. Ahiyah, Asher, Ahiyah is the name that was told to Moshe to tell them, to Bnei Israel. This is the God who has come to redeem us. But there's another interesting concept to be associated with this particular name. This is the name at the level of Keter, which is the highest level of revelation of his name. And at this level also there's a power to unify opposites, unify body and soul, unify Israel and the nations, unify the vessel and the light, physicality and spirituality. Okay. And that's also 1228. Asher, Ayeh, Asher, Ahiyah. This is an interesting number, 181. The reason why this is interesting is because it's the only place, it's the ordinal for the only place in the Tanakh where the end letters, this is to be found in Psalm 72, and it's with the sun and before the moon. Im shemesh v'lifnei yireach. Im shemesh v'lifnei yireach, from Psalm 172. With the sun and before the moon. The end letters spell Mashiach in order. Im shemesh v'lifnei yireach. So Im, the last letter is Mem. Shemesh, the last letter Shin. Yireach, Im Shemesh Lifnei. Lifnei, the last letter is Yod. Yireach, the last letter is Chet. Those letters spell Mashiach. The initial letters rearranged to spell Yeshua. that's telling you who the Mashiach is. And he is the Yeshua is the Mashiach at the level of Keter. The revelation of Mashiach that reveals the name at the level of the name of YHWH at the level of Keter. The all merciful upper revelation of the name of YHWH. Okay, so this is very interesting. This is what I mean where we've got to get to a place of maturity. These two taken from Isaiah 7:16. I go through this a lot, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but basically the Vav is representing the truth. What truth? Od Yosef Chai. But obviously you've got to understand the intricacy of this statement, Od Yosef Chai. You've got to understand all the implications of history. You've got to understand all the details of what that means, all the truth regarding that. And that can be revealed through the Torah and through analysing what God has done to fulfill his Torah. So this is going to bring us to an awareness of what this statement means, Od Yosef Chai, because this is the power to reinvigorate Yaakov, bring him back to strength, give him his ruach. Okay. By the way, the name YHWH dwells on the ruach, but just not this ruach. We'll get to that when we go through the Zohar. So you've got these two statements taken from Isaiah. He will eat butter and honey, talking about chemed with dvash. This is a messianic prophecy. He will eat butter and honey. He will eat butter and date syrup. Okay, when he knows how to reject bad and choose good. But then prior to that, so this is the first statement. Ma'os bara uvahar batov. And you can see it's exactly the same as the next one that talks about the youth. Now the youth is Metatron. So states of consciousness that are not quite messianic. Pre-Metatron. Yesod in the state of flaccid. Yesod in the state of bear in mind, Yesod represents the male anatomy, so the male anatomy in a flaccid state. Okay, this is Metatron, equivalent of Metatron. How you understand it to be. Mashiach, Yosef, Yesod, fully revealed as a live dove, fully circumcised from the Edomite filth into which he's descended, is the truth. This gives us messianic consciousness because we are infused with the truth regarding Yosef. And Yosef is carries the name of YHWH at the level of Keter. He's a revelation of the name of YHWH at the level of Keter. You need the truth, however. So there's two vavs included in this that is not included in this. To reject, ma'os. So you've got to have the truth in order to reject what is worthy of rejection. Bara uvahar. So uvahar means to choose good. You've got to have the truth. You've got to have the vav. Here, look, in this Isaiah, in Isaiah 7:16, which is talking about the youth that does not yet know how to reject bad and choose good. Why? Because he hasn't got the truth. He hasn't got the vav. Ma'os bara uvahar batov. Okay, you can go look at the full verses. I've gone through this a lot, so I'm not going to go through that now. But metatronic states of consciousness is basically where we are in a state of exile, where Yesod is still diminished. The flow from heaven to earth is still not in a state of abundance. It's very restricted. It's very stingy. And therefore we think God is very stingy, and it's not easily aroused. You know, it's not easy to arouse this flaccid state up. You know, we're doing all this effort from below, but there's not much coming from above. You know, you think of all the prayers that go unanswered, all the love that you express, and what do we get back in a state of exile? Not much. We just get drips, just to sustain us barely alive at times. So we're in a state where this channel between heaven and earth is not fully functioning. We need to get up to them messianic levels. We need the truth to empower that union between heaven and earth via the channel of Yesod. We need the truth in order to do that, to bring Yosef fully to life and to present that fully live channel up to Tiferet, which is the name YHWH. Okay, so we're in a very difficult state here. Ma'os bara uvahar batov. We're in this state, a state of a youth that's not able to fully function in the correct capacity. Can't even choose what is bad, can't reject what's bad, can't choose what's good, not able to. And then other kings are in dominion whilst that happens. You can go read that. There's a lot to learn from this, but however, it's exactly the same as the three husks that surround. When we are in this state, we think that this is how things should be. We're like beggars, we're like poor people, compared to the state that we should be in, where Tiferet, Yaakov, is enlivened with the truth, O Yosef Chai. We're in such a diminished state, in such a flaccid state. We're doing all this work from below to arouse God from above, but because we're not able to make that connection fully. Everything is not as it should be. The unity between heaven and earth is not as it should be. It's lacking and devoid of truth. This same verse from Isaiah in the Dead Sea Scrolls has only got one missing vav. In the word for the luminaries in Torah, there's two missing vowels. Hame'oroth. The two missing vowels, that becomes a curse. Okay. It needs the two missing vowels, but they're not written about in the Torah. So where do we get those two vowels from? We get those two vowels when we interpret reality correctly, the 6,000 years of human history, the 6 working days of creation that we are literally experiencing. We are literally experiencing YHWH fulfilling his Torah, doing his work of rectification to bring man to a place where he's very good. When we are able to interpret this reality correctly, in accordance with the Torah correctly, we then have the truth that's missing. We are then in messianic levels of consciousness. Because to know the Torah is one thing, to know how YHWH fulfilled the Torah is another. But those two need to be married perfectly. These are the two truths. The truth of the Torah and what is written. And Yosef is very much a part of that. The Qumran community, be the Essenes or Zadokites or whatever community, Evionites, they was in possession of some measure of that truth. And their copy of Isaiah 15 includes one of the vavs, but not two of the vavs. Why does it only got one of the vavs? Possibly because they had not experienced the 2,000 years of history that needs to be experienced in order to gain that last vav. They may have been in possession of a truth that Yeshua was the Mashiach in some way. Okay, the Jamesian community, of the Jamesian branch of Christianity, probably very much associated with this community at Qumran, were in possession of the truth that Yeshua was the Mashiach, but they didn't have the 2,000 years of history of YHWH fulfilling his Torah in the time of the Mashiach. Okay, so they had one. This is interesting because this is the Masoretic text which has two. The Qumran community had one, and then this verse here has none. So there's things we can learn from that. It's very mystical. I'll try and bring you up the Dead Sea Scrolls of this. It's very interesting. Okay, so I hope I'm not covering too much of this up, but it's basically down here that you can actually see it. This is it blown up. Ma'os bara. It's down here, look. It's obviously slightly different text to what we normally see now, but pretty much it's readable. Where's my cursor? It's here, look. Leda'ato. So you've got this here. Leda'ato. When he knows, or for he knows, ma'os, which is here, look. Ma'os. So here you've got the vav. and then it's bara, curses all over the place, sorry, bara, u vahor, but out of the vahor there's the missing vav, whereas the Masoretic text in this one has got both. It's got both. It's got the vav in the ma'os and the vav in the bahar. In the Masoretic, to choose, so they can reject evil, but they haven't got the capacity to choose good. And this is the Essene community. It about sums them up. All they go on about is they're just continually rejecting evil. They're continually, rejecting evil, but they have not got the capacity to choose good. It's still in a state of diminishment. They haven't got the truth to be able to choose good. Okay. There's loads of stuff that you could go through. By the way, Vladimir Putin is equivalent to the manuscript, the DDS manuscript, Dead Sea Scrolls, it should be DSS manuscript, sorry. He is equivalent to it, and by the way, 1833 is 3 times 611, and 611 is Torah. Okay, so there's lots of connections. Also here, 1560, Vladimir Putin is exactly the same. I'm saying this because he's relevant at this time, Vladimir Putin. Yet all the numbers for him are very, very positive. Still in a state of not full maturity, but I've done this before. I've done lots of gematria on Vladimir Putin, and all Vladimir Putin's gematria is very positive. It just so happens extremely positive. 1560 is exactly the same as 10 times Yosef, 10 times Zion. There's a lot of positive numbers associated with him. So, but still in a state of immaturity, because this has not got both vavs, where we need to be able to reject good based on the truth and reject evil and choose good. So there's a lot to learn from there. All kinds of things like 288 is the 288 lost sparks that the Mashiach is gathering in. 15 times 123 Kates Shem Le Koshech. Kates Shem Le Koshech. It sets an end to darkness. All kinds of things like that. Anyway, it's just interesting. Very interesting. So this is what I took a photograph of from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Like I say, it's not easy to work out, but you can clearly see Mem Vav, Mem Aleph Vav Samech. And the Samech is not easy. There's a split in it that's brought those two letters apart. So you've just got to understand that that is a Samech. Hopefully, but like I say, the writing's slightly different to what we are actually used to. Okay, it actually looks like more like an M, a final M, but it isn't. I don't believe it's Ma'os, but it does look like a final M there. Mem Sofit rather than a Samech, but it is meant to be a Samech. This is, when you go and scrutinise the Dead Sea Scrolls manuscript, this is the photograph that you brought up with. So that just comes from you can go online and find these scrolls for yourself and have a look yourself. Okay, so that was a little bit of a detour, but very interesting one. There's a lot to think about with that. 620, by the way, is Keter. Keter, so that means the crown. We reach the pinnacle of our existence. We have our ornaments where they belong when we are able to reject bad and choose good. Fully with it, fully with the truth, from a place of truth, of audio sifchai, and we understand what that fully means. From that place of truth, we are able to attain the crown that we lost at the giving of the golden calf. Right, Zohar 116a, 3 husks that connect the name, conceal the name YHWH with. So we're going to have a look why the earthquake, the whirlwind and the fire are not direct revelations of the name YHWH, but we'll see the gematria, there's only YHWH. He is the concealment and the revelation. We've got to just be able to discern which one is what is what. We've got to be able to discern. We've got to be able to sort the concealment from the revelation. What conceals YHWH, what reveals him? Because if we don't know the difference, we're going to be rejecting what's bad, rejecting what's good, and choosing what's bad. If we can't see the difference between revelation and concealment, we're in trouble. God has made it difficult for us to be able to distinguish. Kabbalah further delineates two distinct types of klippa noga, literally klippa that can be illuminated, and shlosh klippa hat mayot, which are the impure, hatem mayot, I think it is, hatem yot. 3 totally impure klippot. Klippot noga can be uplifted and refined, so this is good. What of it can be uplifted and refined, it's good. While the only form of reformation and redemption for the 3 impure klippot is their destruction. We've got to reject them. We've got to say that is not YHWH here. In and of itself, we've got to reject it as something bad, as something that's concealment. In the chariot of the prophet Ezekiel, the 3 unclean klippot are called Whirlwind, Great Crown, and Blazing Fire. So slightly different from in 1 Kings 19. While klippot noga are described as the translucent noga around it. From the 3 impure klippot flow and derive the souls of all living creatures that are not kosher, as well as the existence of all forbidden food in the vegetable kingdom, such as orla, the first 3 years fruit of a tree. So now let's have a look at this pit. You can get this off Sefaria.org. Okay, so this is the wind that is mentioned in the verse, and a wind from Elohim is a voice that rests upon the void and guides it in all it needs. This is the secret of the verse. The voice of Hashem is upon the waters, from Psalm 29:3, and the wind from Elohim moved over the surface of the waters. So this is what we're talking about, Ruach Elohim, the 320, that is our Esh as well. Fire, the fire. The stones are immersed deep inside the abyss from which waters flow. This is why they are called the surface of the waters. The wind guided and strengthened the face is called the surface of the deep, each according to its requirements. The name Shaddai dwells upon formlessness. The name Sfa'ot, which means armies, dwells upon the void, and the name Elohim dwells upon darkness. The name YHWH dwells upon the wind. A great and strong wind rent the mountains, but Hashem was not in the wind. The name YHWH is not in the wind because this strong wind comes from formlessness, upon which the name Shaddai rests. Hence it reads, but Hashem was not in the wind, but the name Shaddai was. This is Metatron. This is immaturity. This is a state of immaturity. You know, the forefathers only knew God by the name Shaddai, not YHWH. And it explains that the earthquake is because it was not fully mature. They hadn't experienced exile. The people that had experienced the darkness of exile, in there was the wisdom to comprehend the name of YHWH, because they had experienced the concealment, and it's the concealment that ultimately reveals him. This transformed into revelation. If you haven't experienced the concealment, you cannot experience the revelation to the same degree. You can't read about the name YHWH in a book. It's got to be experienced. Your being has got to connect with his being. And it explains that the earthquake came from the void, as the verse continues, and after the wind, an earthquake, which Hashem was not in the earthquake, because only the name Tzva'ot, as in Adonai Tzva'ot, or YHWH Tzva'ot, rests upon it in the secret of the void. Hence it is called void. As for the fire that comes out of the darkness, the scripture reads, and after the earthquake a fire, but Hashem was not in the fire, because the name Elohim rests upon it from the aspect of darkness. YHWH hid the wisdom in darkness, and it's our work to reveal that wisdom that is hidden in the darkness, hidden in exile. And after the fire, a small voice, which comes from the aspect of the wind of Elohim, upon which the name YHWH rests. What is the wind of Elohim? The Mashiach. Okay, so there's a different wind. There's the wind, there's the whirlwind here, possibly a false Mashiach. And then there's the wind of Elohim, the Ruach, That's the Ruach Elohim, which we know is also connected to fire, because it's the same gematria, 306. We saw that just then. Which comes from the aspect of the wind of Elohim, which upon the name YHWH rests. The verse reads, and when Elijah heard it, and went out, and stood in the entrance of the cave, and behold, there came a voice to him, and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? He did not leave the cave at the first three aspects, only when he heard a still small voice, because the name YHWH was there, and he knew that YHWH was talking to him. Where do we experience God? Not always outside. We experience the concealment. We experience the earthquake, the whirlwind, and the fire. When we experience our own inner soul speaking to us, communicating to us from the depth, and we are able to perceive that, given the experience of the earthquake, the wind, and the fire, we can start to come out of our cave, start to come out of our exile. You know, these are ways to look at it, because do you know the voice that is within? Our true inner being, when we touch base, when we manage to connect to our true inner being, despite the outward experience that we've all experienced in exile, that experience is YHWH, much greater than what we will see on the outside. And then we can come out, we've got the confidence to leave the cave of exile, because we realise how near to us YHWH is. You know, we don't need validation from outside. We need that confirmation from within of who we are. We don't need the validation to come from people we know, people we don't know, experiences that are good, experiences are bad. We don't need that level of confirmation. That confuses us ultimately, because it's full of mixed messages. Is it God or not? Is it God or not? It's difficult to discern. It's difficult to know what's the truth and what's not. But when that inner still voice speaks from the depth of our being, and we hear it, we know that's YHWH, when we've got the confidence to know how near he is to us. It's the source of our being, our very own being. We can then have the confidence to go forward and be all that we are in this world, outside the cave. I think some famous philosopher mentioned, or some famous psychologist mentioned about this concept of the cave, didn't there? Could have been Carl Jung. You know, there's this concept of getting out of the cave, or some kind of analogy to the cave. We've got to get out of our own cave, you know, and start to experience God from within, not just be bombarded by what we think is God on the outside, that's nothing more than an earthquake, a whirlwind, and a fire. Hidden in that is God himself. Hidden in that is going to, because of our experience of that on the outside, we are going to seek deeper within for answers, and we will find, because the truth is within. We carry a spark of the name of YHWH. We carry a spark of the Mashiach within. That voice is within. Okay, so let's have a look at some more numbers that are absolutely wonderful. So we've got this as well. Square ordinal of all these, 2,114. If we add this square ordinal with the ordinal of these three, comes to 2,242. We'll probably have a look at those numbers from world to world. From world to world. So it's taken from Psalm 106:48. By the way, Metatron is called, he says the Metatron stretches from one world to the next. Is the entire from one world to the next. At this time, this is my understanding, is like the prince of the world. He is the angel that guards during exile. You know, I've talked about it a lot, but according to the sages, he stretches from one world to the next. It says, blessed be the Lord God of Israel from world to world, and all the people shall say amen, hallelujah. Sometimes when we have not got that connection to our still small voice, or the connection to the truth of the name YHWH, this is not alive and yet within us fully, we got something that stands in the breach, that stands in the gap. Okay, that something is usually Metatronic understanding of who YHWH will be. And that becomes our entire world, the prince of this world, the prince of the world where we are not fully connected to ourselves. We are not fully connected to the name YHWH. We don't fully discern the concept of the Mashiach. We don't know the truth or Yosef Chai. We have not yet reconciled the words of the Torah to the experience of all humanity throughout history. So something else stretches from this world to the next, because we haven't yet got YHWH filling the entire world with his glory, because we're not able to perceive him. We perceive an earthquake, a whirlwind, a fire, and we've got that there instead. And having that there instead of YHWH is nothing more than Metatronic. It's immature states of consciousness, and it fills our entire world. YHWH doesn't fill our entire world yet. His glory does in reality fill the entire of the earth as the waters cover the sea, but we are not able to perceive that because we haven't made not in possession of the truth. We haven't joined up all the dots. We haven't interpreted the Torah according to reality correctly. We misinterpreting everything. We're misjudging everything. We're rejecting good and choosing evil. We're rejecting YHWH and choosing Metatronic, immature levels of consciousness. And that is our entire world until we make blessed be the Lord God of Israel from world to world. And yet until we see what he has been doing, until our eyes are open to perceive all his glory, the wonderful way that he's been working throughout the entire of history, the perfect way he's been working. I heard somebody call him a master chess player. He could foresee every move. He made a move and could foresee, like a master chess player. I was listening to a rabbi today, and he talked about how a master chess player can know 15 moves ahead, and there's so much probability with each move, yet a master chess player can predict and know and comprehend if he moves there the next 15 moves. YHWH started at the beginning and predicted the entire sequence of probabilities to get the end result that he desired, to win from the first move. He made the first move, and it was just a matter of time before man made all his moves, and at the end God won anyway. God won from his first move. We were already checkmate. We didn't know the sequence of probability, all the moves that we have made, even the evil that we have chosen, all the wrong moves that we have made. It was all he made the perfect move, and you see his perfection. We all get our turn, but it will be his perfection that determines the outcome, because he made the perfect move. But we can't see that. We're just fumbling around seeing which move we're going to make, not knowing that all we are doing is being a part of that initial perfect move where he will win, where his plan will be accomplished, his perfection will be revealed. So he's like a master chess player, but he could predict the moves of man throughout 6,000 years, and still he will be the winner. Still his perfect plan will be accomplished. Okay, because he can see ahead. But this is where it gets wonderful. Okay, so you've got this concept of world to world. These are the filling out with the name YHWH. So you've got at the level of Asiya, the level of Yitzira. These are where the Vav and the He are filled differently. The He is filled with a He, Vav is filled with a Vav. The He is filled with an Aleph, Vav with an Aleph. The He is filled with a Yud, the Vav with an Aleph. For Bria, and for the highest level of filling at Absolute, the He is filled with a Yud and the Vav is filled with a Yud. Had them all up. So what numbers are these then? 650 would be the square ordinals of all those, the square ordinals of the fillings out. If we add to that this number 464, which is the regular and the ordinal added together. It comes to 2114, which is exactly the same as the square ordinal for all these. What is that telling us? That is telling us that YHWH is the concealment himself. There's only YHWH. There's only ultimately YHWH. So there's a connection even to the concealment. It is not YHWH in and of itself, but nothing is outside of YHWH. So in a way, this is where we take the concealment, and that becomes a revelation of the holy name. I hope you're with me there. That's the transformation from chaos into shalom, from darkness into light. We don't get the light given to us directly. We have a work to do to reveal it. We've got a work to do to sort the good from the bad from the good. Okay, that's our work in this time. It's our rectification to be able to choose good and reject bad. How do we know to choose good and reject bad? What is the measure through which we measure and determine that? It's the name of YHWH. If it's YHWH, it's good, we accept it. If it's not YHWH, it's bad, we reject it. There comes a time towards the end where we see it's all YHWH. You know, all this was just part of a perfect plan. It all mattered. It was all essential. It's an aspect of its perfection. But we can't see that outside of the name of YHWH. We can't see the perfection revealed out with. We've got to see it revealed within the name of YHWH. Just as the still small voice within reveals, not out with. Out with, we've got the earthquake, the fire and the whirlwind. But when we see it within, when we see the name, everything's contained within that name, then everything is acceptable in a way. Because it's all part of his perfect plan. It's all part of his absolute sovereignty. It's all part of his oneness. Nothing is vanity or emptiness. Only outside. Only outside of his name. When we're starting to think there's something other than YHWH, there's nothing other than YHWH. And his utter and absolute perfection being revealed to us, who are a part of it, who have an imprint of that perfection within us that we need to connect to, the still small voice. How do we get there then? How do we reveal this? How do we get inside that name? Remember the Shabbat day. There's a difference between remember and observe, but it's the dysfunction that is available to all humanity, by the way. Observe the Shabbat is really for the Bnei Israel, but to remember the Shabbat is available to all humanity. All humanity can remember the seventh day. It doesn't include all the observations. This to observe the Shabbat, to be Shomer Shabbat, is very, very difficult. You've got to be Jewish, you've got to be Orthodox, you've got to be ultra-Orthodox in order to be Shomer Shabbat. To observe the Shabbat day is very difficult. To remember it is not. You can keep the Shabbat and remember this is the Shabbat day. It's a remembrance, it's a Zachor. Zachor et Yom HaShabbat. You're not keeping all the stringencies of the Shabbat, but you are remembering it. And contained in that memory of the Shabbat, that memory of the seventh day. Why do we remember it? Because we've got the 7 days of work where we sort in good from bad. But we've got to remember there's an end to this. There's an end, there's a rest to this hard work. And don't matter what level of work was completed on the 6th day. Once we get to the 6th day, we enter the Shabbat anyway. It's a matter of time. It's connected to time. The entire redemption is connected to a process called time. We are now in the... Well, if you look at the last 6 hours, we don't really know the exact dates. There has been some alterations to the timing. If we take, for example, where are we at in terms of the last 2,000 years of the Mashiach, given that Yeshua died in AD 30, most probably, we've got 2,000 years to wait, according to the Torah, that parallel the 2 years Yosef was imprisoned. We are now in the 1994th year. We've about 6 within this. We've got less than 7 years. See, it was 7 years at Pesach, so we've got less than 7 years left before Yosef will be fully revealed. And if that is somewhere close to the Shabbat, the rest that is to be gained from that. I hope you're with me. I hope you're with me with that. All this work that we are doing is on a time frame. All this tikkun, all this accomplishment that's got to be accomplished, all these preparations that have got to be prepared to bring us to that place where we're very good, where we're fully mature. Humanity is fully mature. We're at the end of that now. Okay, according to the timing of the Mashiach in exile. Yeshua has been exiled in Edomite exile for nearly 2,000 years. That's what I'm saying. And at the end of that time, the Shabbat will come. So remember the Shabbat. It's not just about this hard work. God is working to a time frame, and like the sages say, once that Shabbat comes, whether you've completed all your work or not is irrelevant. You do everything you can until that time comes, and then you have no choice but to drop tools. Your work is over. You've got to comprehend that you completed all your work, whether you did or not. And this is what it is to remember the Shabbat day. You remember it every day. You work towards it every day. So this is where the Hebrew days are in accordance to the Shabbat. You know, the first day, Yom Rishon, the first day after Shabbat. Yom Sheni, the second day after Shabbat. So Sunday is not Shabbat, it's the first day after Shabbat. Okay, this is where we've got to get to. Got to remember the Shabbat, Zachor et Yom Shabbat. There's lots of wonderful things involved in that, because it's about completing the work. 127 is one of the fillings out of Yeshua, by the way. So Yeshua, the ordinal filling of Yeshua, where the Vav is filled with a Yud. The filling of Yeshua at Atziluth. The ordinal filling of Yeshua at Atziluth. So that's remember the Shabbat day as well. Then we've got this, the still silent voice. It comes to 434 in this number here. Let's just see what numbers we come up. I can't possibly go through them all in this lesson because it's just too many numbers to go through. Okay, straight away we've got this massive powerful double connection, because one of the fillings out of a still small voice, the filling out at absolute, is 1506. That's when Vav is filled with a Vav and He is filled with a He. And there's one Vav and two He's in called Damar, Dakar. So one of the fillings out, the first filling out is 1506, which is connected to this. You shall give truth to Yaakov. Od Yosef Chai Titen Emeth Yaakov. Give truth to Yaakov, one of the 13 principles of one of the 13 attributes of mercy at the level of Keter. This is from the book of Micah, chapter 7. Give truth to Yaakov. What truth? Od Yosef Chai. The regular and the ordinal come to 1656, which is this number here from a still small voice. It's the square ordinal plus the regular comes to 1656. 8 times 207, 8 times or, 8 times light. So if we take the 1503 and we add 3 Kalel, 1 for each word, Titain and Methli Yaakov, because the truth is concealed from Yaakov, and the Kalel represents a concealment, the letter Aleph, which represents the way that Yod He Wah hides, comes to 1506. Exactly the same as still small voice filled. So straight away, powerful connections, a powerful double connection. Innocent ox, who is this? Zohar 3:16 3b. Sorry, it's 3, book 3, page 163b. The Mispah Gadol of Shah Tam, innocent ox, comes to 1506, exactly the same as a still small voice. So we can see how that truth about Joseph has got to be connected. He's the innocent ox. He's been condemned as guilty, worthy of death. These two numbers here, 82 and 93, are highly messianic, because 82 is Mashiach ben David, when David is spelled Daleth Vav Daleth, and 93 is Mashiach, the ordinal of Mashiach ben David, the ordinal of Mashiach ben David, the Mispah Gadol ordinal, when the nun is 25 instead of 15, sorry, instead of 14. Okay, so there's 11 difference basically. So there's an 11 difference between that. It's Mashiach ben David ordinal, Mashiach ben David ordinal, the Mispah Gadol ordinal. But it's connected 1506 to all these. It's absolutely wonderful. Let's have a look at the next one. And then we've got that one. The still small voice comes to Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben David is the final revelation of the concept of the Mashiach that completes the name of YHWH. It's the circumcised heart. It's, Mashiach ben David sits upon the throne of David. What is the throne of David according to Vilna Gaon? The throne of David is Mashiach ben Yosef. He sits upon the throne of Mashiach ben Yosef. Mashiach ben Yosef is the throne upon which David sits. It's all connected. You've got to have that revelation of Mashiach ben Yosef and know Mashiach ben Yosef is alive. And that then becomes the throne upon which Mashiach ben David sits. Because it's what connects Tifereth through Yesod to Malkuth. Mashiach ben David is Malkuth. A fully rectified kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. So there's all kinds of wonderful connections there. Let's see what we've got here then. So these are just some of the filled, it looks like we're going to have a look at some of the filled numbers and some of the numbers when we put them together. So we've got this number here. Where does it come from? It comes from the square ordinal. The square ordinal of all the husks. This is where we've got to unite the two together. Can you remember where we had to actually unite the two processes together? The exile and the redemption, the Metatron and the Mashiach, the darkness and the light, the concealment, the revelation, the truth with the lie or the concealment, the falsehood, the sheker that hides the truth. There's always got to be a unity because there's nothing being vain. So when you unite the concealment with the revelation, the still small voice that's a revelation, we get other connections that can be made. So this is the concealment, the square ordinal of the concealment. This is the square ordinal of the revelation. If we add them together, 1, 3, 6, 4, which is the bit in, the unity in between, isn't it? What is that then? And the bones of Joseph, which the children of Israel had brought up. So Joseph, the bones of Joseph caused the split of the sea, the Yam Suf, the sea of the end. Metatronic ways of thinking are not able to bring you to that end. They're not able to bring you to the case. At the end of 2 years, once Joseph has gone through his rectification, he's 2 years in prison, he's 2,000 years in Edomite exile, he's gone through a rectification during that process that enables him to conclude, make the right decision between what is right and wrong. He gets to that place of maturity. He gets to the place of the end. He gets to the place of redemption, where he's able to split the sea and bring us all through. It was the bones of Joseph, according to the sages, that caused the sea to split. In a state of metatronic consciousness, we're not able to see maturity. Things get to full maturity. It's like Yeshua who cursed the fig tree. The fig tree, what that represents, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Some people associate it to sexual relations between Adam and Eve. They weren't yet mature enough to eat of that fruit, so it all ended up in disaster. There come a stage where we're mature enough to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but we're not quite there yet. So this fig tree, this tree of the knowledge of good and evil, is not something that we can partake of without consequences. We're not able to get to the end. We're not able to experience maturity. We're not able to allow that union to occur, whatever sexual union occurred between Adam and Eve that was somehow defective, that resulted in the negative consequences that occurred, that we are now repairing that damage. We will get to a place of maturity. We will get to the end. We will incorporate the end. That means we will be able to give birth easily. There's all kinds of wonderful analogies that can be brought into that place of maturity. You know, like King David is called, is equivalent to a fallen one, which is like an abortion, right? You know, the fallen booth of David will be resurrected. That word to fall is equivalent in some ways to the concept of a stillborn or an abortion, not something that isn't quite fully developed. The sages have said, about Mashiach ben David coming many times, but unfortunately he don't quite reach that place of the end of maturity. Falls before his time. You know, he doesn't get to full maturity. Okay, so we've got to get to the end. We've got to get to that place of maturity where all these concepts, like Yeshua doesn't have to curse the fig tree then, because the fig tree just gives fruit. We're mature enough to eat of that fruit. I have a little bit of a meditation regarding that, because the way that the fig is pollinated is via the death of a wasp or a bee. Like Yeshua's a bee in Hebrew. The wasp that pollinates the fig is not called a bee, it's called a wasp. Okay, so it's a slightly different word, but we know there's a connection between wasps and bees. Okay, this is a fig wasp, but the word for bee is davar, the word. Okay, so the word has got to go into, or the davar, the bee has got to go into the fig to pollinate it, but the word that goes in dies in this process of laying the next generation of eggs and things like that. The word sacrifices its life. So you can see there's some connection there. Yeshua, who was called the Word made flesh, somehow had to die, be like the word, the davar, the wasp, the bee that goes into the fig, to pollinate the fig, to cause it to fruit. Yet he was the same one that cursed the fig tree, because he wasn't yet ready. It's like Shimon bar Yochai, when he came out of the cave, the first time he came out, I think it was after 12 years, he's cursing everything, and everything's like burning up in fire. He's not mature enough yet to choose good and reject evil and choose good. He hadn't quite got to that place of maturity, so he went back in for another year, and he came out after 13 years, like bar mitzvah. He'd reached a certain level of maturity, and he was able to stop causing things to burn up in judgment. We've got to get to the end of place of maturity where we're not cursing things that shouldn't be cursed. We're bringing that same thing to its full maturity. Mashiach ben Yosef, according to Vilna Gaon, is Metatron. So it's not a fully mature state, is it? That's why you've got concepts within Christianity like celibacy, like virginity. These are high up there, aren't they? These are immature sexual states. Mashiach ben Dawid is all about the opposite to that. It's all, or you get marriage. It's all about marriage and union. It's all about being mature enough to cope with that, not being too immature that you can't eat of that fruit without negative consequences. Okay, so we've got to move from that state. But somehow, Yeshua is connected to that, isn't he? He's connected to that immature state. That Mashiach ben Yosef is not Mashiach at the end. The Mashiach of the end is Mashiach ben David. You know, but he is part of that process. He's part of that necessary process to get us to the end. But we've got to get to that place of full maturity where the Mashiach is birthed in full. Not just in a fallen state, not just in an immature state that is no life. You know, we've got to bring it to that full maturity where we're able to eat the fig and understand everything that's gone on in that, and be mature enough to eat that without negative consequences and all that fig tree means. You know, we're able to partake of union without that causing us to descend or fall or, you know, with negative consequences. We're able to engage in union that causes us to ascend, not descend, that causes more union, not more separation. You know, it's got positive results, positive conclusions, positive consequences, not negative ones. And that will come. That's the Shabbat, isn't it? The reason why they hadn't experienced that level of maturity is because they had not yet experienced a Shabbat. We've got to experience the Shabbat to give us the maturity in a way to be able to fully indulge in the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We've got to reach a certain place of maturity. Okay, so on the bones of Yosef, which children of Israel had brought up. I hope you understand that I wasn't going to talk about that, but that was a meditation that I had today. I was looking at the fig tree. I knew about the wasps because I know that there is some minor debate for halakha. You know, when you're consuming figs, bearing in mind that figs are one of the foods of the land of the Holy Land. You know, the figs and the grapes and the pomegranate and the wheat and the barley and the olives and things like that. The 7 species. The fig's one of the 7 species. So it's a very holy, blessed food. Yet, if you think about it, there are implications for halakha when it's a non-kosher animal that's pollinating it and dying as a result within that fig itself. You can go look it up, what fig wasp. Go look the whole cycle of life between the fig and the wasp, or the davar. I like to call it davar. It's not called that in Hebrew. It's given the word the wasp, the fig wasp. I think it's spelt Sadi Resh Ayin He Hataneh for fig. Anyway, there's lots of things as meditation. I was meditating on that today. You know, something in my mind was sort of drawing me to that, so I've shared that with you. There's a lot more I could probably I need to do the gematria and look into it a little bit more, but there's something in that, because I remember listening to Rabbi is not Rabbi but Alan Cohen Olero that pointed out that there was a time where Yeshua had no choice but to curse the fig tree, but there'll be a time of maturity where that is not necessary. You know, we'll reach a level of maturity where there's something immature about him cursing a fig tree. Is something imperfect about that. We've got to get to a place. This is one of the things I was thinking about. Sometimes within Christianity, we've got this concept of the perfect one. You know, Yeshua was perfect, but sometimes when you're ultra perfect, you're looking at something. There's nothing. You know, what can you unify with? Everything else is less than perfect. Everything else is corrupted in some way. And that's why you've got this concept of celibacy, maybe, because, you know, you've got standoffishness. You've got to understand that nothing is perfect. You've got to understand that we're all in a process of being perfected. There's a difference between perfect and perfecting, because perfect does not include within it the concept of to perfect. So it's lacking in some way. You know, so we've got to celebrate, and this is very much linked to the name of YHWH as well, the 13 attributes of mercy. It's linked to cleanse, and you know, there's a whole teaching on that. I can't go into that at this time, but you know, we have got to be in a place where we continually making teshuvah and continually making progress and continually perfecting ourselves. Okay, we're never going to get to the end. We're never going to be fully perfect, because to be fully perfect, you've got to include the notion of to perfect. Okay, so we're never going to reach that level of maturity. So sometimes it's maturity is accepting that. Perfection is a process, not a destination, not a final destination. It's a process. We are work in progress. We have not yet been completed, and even when the Shabbat shuts down, like the sages say, our work may not even be completed then, but we have to live as if it was fully perfected. Okay, so it's just reaching that place of maturity where you're able to just say, you know, it's Shabbat now. It's fine. What we did, and what's left undone, it's as if it's already done. Let's rest anyway. We will get our rest. It's that level of maturity, isn't it, that brings us to that rest. So 859 times 4, which is connected to this, by the way, 3,436, 3,436. These are my own understanding. Okay, these are meditations I have this morning. They're not like things that I've fully matured and wrestled with, and you know, so I've spoken probably prematurely, but you know, that's part of the need to be perfected as well, isn't it? And I want you to be aware of that. I spoke these things after a short meditation that I was having this morning, just, you know, getting my head around these concepts. So I've probably spoken prematurely about them, but I've shared something with you that's very interesting. It's worthy of a lot more investigation. There's concepts in it that are worthy of investigation. 3436 equals 859 times 4. Going back to the Aleph being the concealment, this is what Baal Shem Tov said. She's got this phrase from the Song of the Sea, Exodus 15:9. It says, Amar oyev erdof asig ahalek shlol. Because the enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will share my buta. The first letters are Aleph, 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 Aleph. This is something nasty. The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, and I will share the buta. The Baal Shem Tov pointed out that that's because Ribono Shel Olam, even the evil, Ribono Shel Olam is the Aleph. Is connected to the concept of the Aleph. Sorry, it's not a Ribono. Alufo Shel Olam, master of the universe. Alufo is connected to the word Aleph. Alufo Shel Olam, master of the universe, master of the world. So Alufo is, there's only one ultimate Alufo, that is YHWH, yet there's Alephs here. Because even this bad stuff is really just concealing the master of the universe, like these husks up here concealing the name YHWH. So we can see how that is connected. That is connected to the unity of the concealment with the revelation. This is connected to the unity of the concealment and the revelation. Yosef had flesh that needed to be decomposed in order to reveal his bones. It was his bones that were buried in Shechem, in the land of Israel, but not his flesh. And there's reasons why his flesh wasn't buried. You know, unlike Yaakov, who was buried body and, you know, including his flesh, it was fully buried. And Moshe is not buried in according to the Torah, in a hidden way. His burial place will be revealed at the end of time. But the bones of Joseph were buried in Shechem. I've been there myself. The bones that the children of Israel brought up were buried in Shechem, and there's all kinds of mystery involved with that. So the bones, the concealment that concealed him, the flesh that concealed him was rotted away, and then we got the revelation of the bones of Joseph and these bones that split the sea. There's all kinds of wonderful things involved in that. So it's all very interesting stuff. All wonderful connections. Death swallowed up eternally. 731 and 128. Ordinal 859. 731 is Moshe, which is 345 plus Yeshua 386. Comes to 731. The luminary is corrected. We talked about Hamaroth, the two missing vavs. If you put the two missing, and when they have got the two missing vavs, it's Amarot, which means the curse. When you put the two vavs in, it spells Hamaroth. It comes to 658. If you add the ordinal to that, which I think is 73, comes to 731. So the corrected luminaries, the regular and ordinal of the corrected luminaries, are 731. Death swallowed up, 731. Is connected to Moshe and Yeshua, a unity between Moshe and Yeshua, unity between Yaakov and Yesod. That then, this state of death, this state of Yesod in death, the male anatomy is called dead and alive. Od Yosef Chai is in his alive state. That channel between heaven and earth is fully abundant, fully overflowing, fully flowing into Malkuth below. Death swallowed up, this stingy, dead, unarousable state, this immature state, this cursed fig tree state is no more. We just got the abundance, the life, the light. We got that connection fully open, the abundance and the flow from above to below is fully established. 859, so we've got connections all the way. Yeshua HaMashiach, regular and ordinal. So already made that connection, didn't we? The 110 to the concealment. Okay. But is also connected to the unity between the concealment and the revelation, or between that conceals the name YHWH, that reveals the name YHWH, that conceals the name YHWH, that reveals the name YHWH, the Aleph, or she's called the Aleph Gadol, the big Aleph. All interesting stuff. And then we've got this concept of listen, as in listen to him, the prophet like Moshe. So we've got the, where do we get these numbers from? 958 comes from the regular and the ordinal. That 92 is Mashiach ben Dawid, ordinal, when it's got the Vav. When it's got the additional Yud in the name David, the perfected name of David. And then we've got the Mispah Gadol, ordinal and regular. Add them together, 2,577, which is 3 times 389. Listen to who? Listen to Yeshua HaMashiach. Because there's certain thing that he's the truth. He's the truth that we need. When we listen to him, Tishma'un, the prophet like Moshe. And then I'm just going to go back, because if I don't go back, you won't see what number I'm looking at. This number here I'm going to look at now, which is the regular and ordinal of still small voice, plus the regular and ordinal of the 3 aspects of the husk that conceal the name YHWH. So 1,662. I've put C over there. So just want you to get where to get that from. Regular and ordinal of the 3 husks, the regular and ordinal of Kol, Damama, Dakar, it's still small voice. So it's related to this concept, which is the key of David. So if you look here, the still small voice and the husks united together are the square ordinal of the key of the house of David on his shoulder. Shechem, the place where Joseph's bones are buried, is related to the concept of the key of the house of David on his shoulder for the end of the Torah. So we've got this 1,506 again, which is connected to one of the fillings out of We just saw that, didn't we? 1506. Let's just go back and we'll see, because there's a double connection. 1506 filled, which was Titain and Methyl Yaakov, give truth to Yaakov. So we've got it here also. It's connected to the key of the house of David. So there's a double connection, basically, is what I'm saying. Let's just have a look. Oh no, it's for this bit. There's a double connection. So we've got for the end of the Torah. Yeshua said, you know, this is the same. For the Mashiach is the end or perfection or completion of the Torah. For righteous, for those who believe in him. So quite enigmatic and very, very. It means the goal, really. It's the goal or the end. It's not just the concept of the end. It's the goal. You know, the Mashiach is the goal of the Torah. In what way should we really understand that? The Mashiach is the goal of YHWH fulfilling his Torah. He's going to reveal Od Yosef Chai. He's going to reveal how he has perfectly accomplished his Torah to reveal this truth to Yaakov. So the Mashiach is the end of the Torah, the completion of the Torah, the goal of the Torah. Because through the Mashiach, through the concept of Mashiach ben Yosef, the utter and absolute perfection of YHWH is revealed. And this is going to bring us to states of shalom, to states of awareness and consciousness of God that bring us to a place of shalom and that prepare us for that final revelation of the Mashiach, which is Mashiach ben David, which is a revelation of shalom for all humanity. It unites all humanity together. Give truth to Yaakov. We've got that again. It comes to 1503. Add the Kalel, the Alephs, the three Alephs. The Kalel is an Aleph. We add the Kalel because it represents YHWH hidden in everything. So whatever the number comes to, we can always add a Kalel because there's always going to be YHWH, Aluf Shel Alam hidden there. That's the whole concept of the Kalel. So give truth to Yaakov, we add the three Kalel, which represents the concealment, the Aluf Shel Olam, and it comes to 1506. Which is exactly the same as for the end of the Torah, which is exactly the same as the filling out for a still small voice. But we know where we get this from as well, don't we? It's also double connected because it's 1662, which is a square house with a key of the house of David on his shoulder, and it's also the unity of the still small voice, regular and ordinal, and the three husks, regular and ordinal. So this is also connected to this verse. He made an end to darkness. This is it, the Kates, Mashiach ben Yosef. This is, you've got to get to the end. There's some power in getting to the end, to get to that place of maturity. The Yam Sof, that's another word for end, isn't it? Sof, Sofit letters means the letters on the end. It's connected in some way to Kates, which also means the end. You've got the Torah portion where Yosef is rushed from the pit. It's called Mikates, at the end or from the end. At the end of 2 full years, Pharaoh was dreaming, you know, so there's all kinds of connection. That's called Mikates, Parashah Mikates, from the end. It's all connected. And every end perfection he fathoms, a stone of darkness and the shadow of death. Alright, we've got the Titania Methyl Yaakov there, look, which has also got the that was connected, weren't it, to the number that we were looking at previously. And then we've got this, which we've got this in the Torah scroll, we've got this massive Aleph here, which is Aleph Daleth Mem Adam, which stands for Adam, David, Moshiach. Adam Shet Enosh, but the Aleph is big. And in Vayikra, the Aleph is written little, and this symbolizes Moshe, but Moshe will be revealed. The whole concept of Moshe, the whole concept of Mashiach, the whole realm of Da'ath, the whole knowledge of God will be expanded to the size of a big Aleph, like this, the Aleph of Adam, rather than the Aleph of Vayikra. the little aleph, the humble aleph, the diminished aleph within the letter of the Torah. When we look outside at what YHWH has been doing for the whole of Adam throughout 6,000 years, this expands our consciousness of Alufo Shal Olam that's represented by the aleph. It expands our consciousness of the Mashiach, It expands our consciousness of Adam. It raises him up from a diminished state in exile to an exalted messianic state, from a Metatronic state to an exalted state, from death to life. Od Yosef Chai. So that comes to 1662. If we add the ordinal to that, it's 1776, which is 2 times 888. The Mispar Gadol is 2661. When we count the Aleph as 1,000, okay, 2661 plus 3 Kalel each for each word, Adam, Shet and Enosh, comes to 2664, which is 3 times 888. 888 is HaMoshiach filled out. HaMoshiach, the Mashiach. So we know this is related to the concept of the Mashiach, where we get the expanded consciousness. That expanded consciousness of Alufo Shal Olam and all his perfection, okay, is revealed. And with that, I'm going to say shalom, because I know I've got to the end. There is another lesson coming. If you've enjoyed it, subscribe and share. And if you got this far, well done. Shalom.